Hi, can you please confirm? Are you hearing my voice or not? Hello.
Yes, Srinivas.
Thanks, Ishwar.
Yeah, what are you asking?
Yeah, I'm asking. Can you hearing my voice or not?
Yeah, we are hearing your voice.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Hi everyone, so very good morning. So please wait 2 more minutes, we'll start.
Based responsibility
Okay, guys, we'll start now. So let me share my screen. Okay. So till now, so what we have discussed, we saw that. So how to load the data into the Snowflake tables. After that, we saw that. So how to implement a validation things, right? So now, so we'll jump into the important, very important topic called so table types. So table types.
Sorry, Dinesh, this is Sirisha.
I'm sorry for the background noise.
Dinesh,
Let me log into our Snowflake account. Okay, fine. So here, so till now, so what we have done, so we have loaded the data from so our local system to so into our Snowflake tables, right? We pick the files and then we have loaded into the Snowflake tables by using different stage options, right? We saw that. So how to work with a user stage, how to work with a table stage, how to work with a name stage, right? These are the three options. We saw that. And then we know, so what is the difference between user stage and then table stage and then name stage? So in which situation we have to use the different types of stages. And we saw some kind of so validations, what all the things we can able to see when you have any errors in the file, so how to identify the errors and how to so skip the error records. These things we saw that. Now so we'll jump into the table types. We are going to jump into table types. Now when you observe, so one thing in Snowflake, so we have different table types when you created. But here, whatever the tables till now we have created, right? These all the tables are permanent tables. All these tables are the permanent tables. Remember, by default, whatever the table we are going to create in Snowflake, those are by default, it is a permanent tables. Those are permanent tables. And we have three types. Those are permanent, permanent, and transient, and temporary. We have these three things. One is permanent, and then transient, and then temporary. So what is the difference between this? Whatever the table we are going to create, right? By default, it will be a permanent only. This is the permanent is applicable for tables, tables. It is applicable for schemas. It is applicable for databases. For all these things, permanent will be applicable. Whatever the database we created, right? The database we created, this is permanent database. The schema we created within this database, those are the permanent schema. By default, it will be permanent database, permanent schema. And so you will have transient for tables, and this is for schemas also we have. This is for databases also you will have. A database permanent, so transient database will be there, transient schema will be there, transient tables also it will be there. We will see that what it means by the transient and what is the difference between these things. And then temporary, remember, it is only applicable for tables only. This is not applicable for schema. Temporary is not applicable for schema. Temporary is not applicable for databases. Now, what is the difference between permanent, transient, temporary? Why we require these things? So when it is coming to permanent, just remember you will have retention period, and at the same time you will have fail-safe period, fail-safe period, retention period. So up to maximum 90 days maximum for permanent tables, and then fail-safe. This is for 7 days. This is applicable only for permanent tables only. The retention will come to that. What it mean by the retention period 90 days, and then what it mean by the fail safe period. So this 7 days fail safe period will be always, it will be the 7 days. But when it is coming to the transient table only retention period will be there. Only retention period will be there. That is by default 1 day. No fail safe. For transient, you will not have fail safe. And for the temporary, you will have retention. This is also only 1 day, and there is no fail safe. The maximum up to 1 day. Here the maximum up to 90 days. Now, so one more thing. So when it is coming to the temporary, so this is only for particular session. Only for particular session. After the session, the table will not be available. When it is coming to the temporary table, only for the session, the table will be available. After that, table will not be available. So then, so what is the reason behind creating a temporary table? We'll see that. So before that, we'll understand what is this retention period or failsafe. Now, if you observe, just a minute. So let me open this. Coming to the table types. Okay. Now observe this one. So table types. So this is so what we discussed. So fail safe is 0 for the temporary transient, right? And one more thing, if you remember, when you created a trial account, we created trial account for enterprise edition, right? Not for the standard. So because of this reason, in a standard edition, if you observe, the failsafe here retention period will be so only 1 day. Only 1 day. This is nothing but time travel period. And the failsafe for the permanent tables, you will have 7 days. But only the enterprise edition, you will have 90 days and then 7 days. You have a failsafe. That's why we selected the enterprise edition when you created a trial account. This one will have 0 to 90 days. And then for the temporary table, see this one, it will only till session. Till the session, the table will be available. But when it is coming to transient and permanent tables, until you drop the tables, these tables will be available. See this, whatever the tables we created here, so we didn't drop any table. These tables is available until you drop. But if you create a temporary table here, temporary table, then once you log out and then log in, that is nothing but a session, new session, your temporary table will be gone. It will not be available. But so what is the main reason behind creating the temporary table? So let's consider this scenario. For example, when it is coming to temporary table, generally, let's assume that we have a table in database, any database. When you have a table, following me, right? If you have any questions, so please ask me or text me in the chat window. Welcome. So see that when you have a table, for this particular table, in general, traditional databases or legacy systems, what is our best practice? What we will do? if you want to do some changes on a existing table, you are going to not do the changes on existing table directly. What we will do is we will create some backup table, right? So same copy of the table, we will create some backup table. So like emp underscore backup. Once you created a backup table, you are going to do all the changes, and then you are going to test the your changes, whatever the changes you want to implement, you will implement on this table, right? On this particular table, you will implement the changes. After that, you will do validation. So after that, for example, you will test everything. So based on your requirement, is everything is fine in this particular backup table or not? Once everything looks good, then whatever the changes you have implemented here, you are going to implement the changes on your original table, right? So you will not do directly on your original table. You will do that in a backup table, and then after that, so once everything is looks good, then you will implement the changes on your this table, right? So like this, every user used to create a backup table. After some time, so what we will forget is we will forget to delete your backup tables, right? If you observe, so mainly when you are working familiar with, like when you are working in any database team or so any particular thing, you may observe like 3 months once or 6 months once, so your admins will send the mails. So we are planning to like so remove, so clean up the unnecessary tables, not utilized tables, unutilized tables from the database. It means nothing but they are trying to remove. So like this, every user will create, right? So maybe so like a 10 to 20 tables will be available in the database, means it will unnecessarily, it will occupy the space, right? It will become a space issue. So for that, what they will do, they will send a email, unnecessary tables we are trying to remove, unutilized tables. It is nowhere related to anywhere. So we see that these are the tables which is available, we are going to remove, right? To avoid that problem, so what Snowflake generally what, so it is going to be charged, it is going to be charged based on the storage, right? One is processing, another one is for the storage, right? 1 terabyte they are going to charge around so $23 per month, right? So when you are doing that, so going forward we will see that, so what is the exact pricing, and then how it will be, how we can able to relate each and everything. Now, to avoid that, what we are doing here to avoid this, so practice, so here we have a temporary table. So when you are creating itself, you know that, okay, this is just for my testing purpose. I am creating a new table, but I don't want this table to occupy any storage in my database. Then what we can do, you can create a temporary table like this. You can create a temporary table. What will happen? It will only for that particular session. After that, it will be dropped. After that, it will be dropped. It will not be available. So it is completely, it will be dropped. No need to drop specifically when you create a temporary table. So that's why we will create temporary tables. Okay. But when it is coming to transient, you will not have fail-safe option, and then retention period 90 days will not be available. Only 1 day will be available. Now we need to understand what is this retention period. Retention period is nothing but time travel days. Time travel days. It means, for example, time travel means, let's assume, okay, let's observe this scenario carefully. Suppose we created a table on, this is December, right? Okay, December 1st, we have created a table. And on December 1st itself, we have inserted 100 records. Okay. On December 2nd, let's assume that we inserted 20 more records inserted. Okay. And on 5th, we have deleted 10 records. Okay. On 10th, we have updated 5 records. On 11th, again, we inserted 5 records. Let's assume that these are the DML changes what we have done. These are the changes what we have done on your table. So when we have created this, we created this your table on a December 1st, right? Now we are, so for example, so we are 12th in December 12th, sorry, so 20th, right? So we are in December 20th, and we need to know our, so intention is we need to understand, we need to understand, so before all these changes, now in 20th if you observe, so what will be the data here in 20th when you observe the data, so the all after all the changes the final data will be available in this particular table, right? But our requirement is, our intention is, we need to go back to the time travel. It means I need to go back to exactly on 10th, and exactly on 10th day, 10th date. So I want to see how the data looks like at that particular day in this particular table. Or I want to go back to on 2nd, December 2nd. I want to see how the data looks like exactly on this particular table. It means, so nothing like, we can call it as a snapshot of the data. Snapshot of the data. So let's say, so another way, so if you take a snap of yours, for example, let's take a pic of yours 3 months back, 6 months back, 1 year back, what it will tell to us, 3 months back how we are looking, right? Exactly at that particular time it will give you the details. If you have your picture of 6 months back, it will give you the details, right? So how exactly you are looking, not your current one, right? For example, another example, let's take, if you want to go to your if you are having so bank details, if you want to go back to 6 months back exact day, and then you want to know, so what exactly at that particular day, so my account details, what is my current balance at that particular day exactly, what you can do, you can go to the specific date, the bank statement, and then you can check your details at that particular day, what is my the available balance, right? You can check that, right? The same way here, so we will have a time travel option. This time travel option will decide how many days you can go back, and then you can check your details there. That is nothing but retention period. So here, when you have a permanent tables, these whatever the tables we are having here, right? All these are the permanent tables. These permanent tables will have the retention period of, by default, it will be 90 days. 90 days you can go back. For example, this table when it has created 1210, we have created this particular table, right? On 10th, we have created this table. By default, this table when you created, so retention period, by default retention period will be 1 day. But if you create the maximum up to 90 days, you can able to create. Up to 90 days we can able to create. So when you create the retention period maximum up to 90 days, what will happen is, for this particular table, so next 90 days, for example, this is on, so December 10th we create, right? Jan, Feb, March. So till March 10th. So you are in, so let's assume that you are on March 10th. You can go back to up to December, and then you can able to check what exactly the data is available on any specific day. Now suppose once the retention period is like moved, then what will happen? So let's assume that. So here, so let's say we have given retention period. So let's take simple example of 1 day. 1 day only you have given retention period. It means the first you have created a table, and then you are on 2nd. So you can able to go back and then check. So what is available on 1st? Then you are on third, your retention period is only 1 day, then you can go back and then you can check the details. So what exactly available on second, but not on first. But anyway, you will have all the details so in the table. But if you want to know how the table looks like exactly on this particular day, you cannot able to check because retention period is only 1 day. You can go back and then you can check in the second, so how the table looks like. And then again, if you move to the fourth, so again you can go back to only 1 day, right? 1 day retention period, you can go back only 1 day. On third, how the table looks like. On fourth, how that, so fourth means, for example, if you select some data from here, so let's assume that if you select some data from here, you can see, so what is the current state of the table. Anyway, you can able to see that, right? But so yesterday, what are the changes has been implemented, so how the table looks like. So then you would, based on the retention period only, you can able to go back and then you can able to check the details. That is the main intention of the time travel, or we can call it as a retention period. This is applicable for tables, databases, and schemas, but not for temporary. Temporary tables, temporary only applicable for tables, not for the schemas, not for the databases. This is applicable for only temporary, only for the tables. But permanent and transient, these are applicable for databases, schemas, and then tables. We will see that how to create a form, how to create a transient, and then how to create a temporary tables. So now one thing, okay. So one more thing. So before going and creating, one more thing, just remember, when you have a database, assume that your database is permanent. If you create anything in this database, schema or table, by default it will be a permanent only. If you don't mention any keyword, by default, if your database is permanent database, now here our database is permanent database. If you create anything under this, it can be a database, it can be a schema, everything will be permanent only by default. It will inherit the properties from the database. Suppose if your database is transient database, then whatever you are going to create under this transient schema or table, it will be a transient only. For example, let me show you something. Show database, data, databases. Now observe this. See this one. So we have, these are the, so the one database we have. So these are the other database, by default it is available. So now if you observe here, see this retention period is 1 here, right? Retention period is by default 1. The maximum you can create up to 90 days. Okay. And then, so here, so we can able to see, so is current, right? These are not, it is not telling, so anything like related to transient, right? For example, the same way, if you observe, show tables, show tables, now observe this, it will give you the information about the tables. See this one, all these other tables which we have created, by default retention period, it will be 1. See this kind, table kind, what is the table kind? Only the table. It is telling that it is nowhere, it is telling that it is a transient, and then it is a temporary, right? So here, just a minute. Okay, all are telling that, so this is a, so temper, so permanent tables, right? So these are the permanent tables here. So now just a minute. Observe this retention period time. only 1 day, right? By default, if you don't create any retention period, by default it will be 1 day. It can be a database, it can be a table, or it can be a schema. All these are permanent. If you observe, so this table kind, it is telling that just it is a table. Now, let's create a transient database, and then we will see that how it will work.
Yeah, Dinesh, one question.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, as we discussed, a retention
Mm,
period 90 days, but these
mm.
permanent tables are showing retention time 1. So,
The
what is the
coming to
difference?
that. Coming to that.
Okay.
By default, if you don't give any retention period, by default it will be one only. Sometimes what will happen? So no need to maintain 90 days time travel. So for all the tables, right? Whichever the tables we required 90 days time travel, for that only we will give the retention period 90 days. Otherwise, we won't give that. It's
Yeah, if it is
unnecessary.
1 day, after 1 day it will remove, right? It should remove, but
No,
still
no,
tables are
data will be there. So don't get confused in between the tables and then retention period. These tables data, the permanently it will be available in the tables anyway. But only the thing is, if it is 1 day means up to 1 day you can go back and then check the previous day how the data looks like.
there. Okay, okay.
Okay, that is the difference. Okay. For example, if you
Just
give
for retention time to see the data, I mean previous days
yeah,
data.
exactly. To see the previous data in the tables before this changes. For example,
Mhm.
we have, so as we discussed, so let's take this EMP table, the same EMP table, this one. So when it has been created, it has created on 10th, right? It has created on 10th. So 10th, we have inserted some records. Okay, inserted. Let's assume that 10 records we have inserted. We will see that practically also. And the same EMP table on 11th. So what we have done is you have deleted one record. Okay, and so on 12th, so what we have done is again we inserted again 20 records. Okay, and again, so just understand carefully, this is very important. We have updated two records. Okay, and final table, if you observe, what you will have after all these changes, you will have the data in this EMP table. Now assume that 8 records, right? After all these changes, the data will be available here. Now, our intention is we want to go back to 11th, and then exactly I want to see how the data looks like on 11th on this particular table. You got my point, right? Or you want to go back to 12th, and then I want to see before these changes. Before, so in 13th, if you observe, after all these changes, it is available. Or I want to go back and then check how exactly the data is available when the table is created.
I have a question.
Right.
What is
Right?
the purpose of going back in time and seeing what the data was like in a given
Okay.
table?
So this is for the time travel, and then we can able to check, and then we can able to compare. So what are the changes we have performed on that particular table? That is the main intention behind that.
So is this something like
Mm.
do people practically use this data for comparing and saying, okay, this is the change that's happened between that day and today, like sales or something like that?
Exactly, to trace back the changes. So and then we can able to check. So we can comparison also. For example, one more option also. Here, whatever the retention period we are giving, right? Okay, let's assume that. So you have given for like 90 days or 5 days, whatever it may be, right? After that, you will have a fail safe also. Fail safe period will be 7 days, 7 more extra days. Suppose by mistake you have dropped this table, so what will happen? Everything will be gone, right? But if you have a retention period, so how many days retention period? Within that retention period days, you can able to get back the table. You can able to undrop the table. So that is also another So intention behind the retention period here for the time travel. Suppose generally in other databases, what will happen? If I drop this table, this is gone. That's it. You cannot able to recall it until unless if you do some purge commands, then if you have dropped, then only we can able to do that. Some of the databases option is available purge, but so most of the databases once it is dropped, it is gone, right? You cannot able to recall it. So but here once you drop this table also, so within this retention period, if you observe the table has been dropped, then you can able to recall it. So that is another intention behind this particular thing. Okay. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying, I have a difficulty understanding this. I mean, is the purpose to go and I still don't get the purpose of doing this time travel. Is it more like a recovery of the information, or is there anything that they actually do functionally with this data by going back in time in Snowflake?
Yeah, Priya. So I will give you an example here exactly. You can relate it to that. For example, you have your bank details, right? You have a account, bank account you have. Now, so in your account, you can check your available balance now. Today, you can check your available balance, right? Now, so intention is if you want to go back to 5 days before and then you want to check exactly what is your available balance at that particular day, what you can do? You can go back to your bank statements or your account and then you can check that exact date. So what is my available balance, right?
Right.
So currently you are seeing your data, that is fine. But you want to go 1 month back or 2 months back or 3 months back. The data should be available, right?
Correct.
So exactly how the data, it's a kind of snapshot. Exactly you can time travel, you can go back and then you can check what happened exactly on that particular day. So
So
before this changes, so
in a
how the data.
traditional
Hmm,
database, right, or a data
hmm,
warehouse, you will
mhm,
have an entry made, right, on
mhm,
that particular day if you have deposited something. So we would
hmm,
generally go back and say, as of that day, how much was my balance, like a summary amount, 15 days back.
hmm, hmm,
Then the
hmm,
same table will contain today's information also, and we would use today's date and say, what is my summary as of today, right?
correct. Exactly.
So this is actually used like that, you're saying, from but for a functional perspective itself. Like if I wanted to go and see my records like 1 month back, what is it? And then
Hmm,
I can see it from there.
exactly.
And but you said it'll be maintained only for 90 days, right? So you can't
Correct.
go back beyond
You
90
cannot
days.
go beyond 90 days. Yeah. It means if
Okay.
when you are coming to your bank, you can go back to up to 3 months of the bank statement. That's it. That is the limitation here. So not more than 90 days when you're comparing with this.
Okay, so it's like your bank statement, right? You can go back only for 5 months or 12 months, something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, you can relate with that. So you can understand very easily. Okay, we will see that other questions also. Okay, let's come to this one. Okay, if you are not understanding, so let me know. So we'll explain one more time also. So this is very important feature in Snowflake. So based on this retention time, so we can go back and then we can get the previous tables also for the comparison purpose. For example, so this table created on this particular day, right? And on the final on today, so now, so on 20th, so the table looks like this, 8 records. Now I want to compare this first day to today. So what are the changes we have done? So first day, if you have so maybe 100 records, 10 records, now you have only 8 records. So what all the records has been added? If you want to compare that option also, we can able to do that. So in cloning option. So now what we will do is first we will see in this session, so how to create the temporary tables and then transient tables and then so permanent tables and database anyway. These are the permanent tables and then permanent schema and then permanent tables. So if you don't give any keyword when you are creating a table or database, by default it will be a permanent only. If you give a keyword, the transient, then the database will be transient. Okay, let me show you here. So how we can able to do that. Let's come here. So for example, let's create transient database. Here, what we are doing is, see this one, generally what we will do when you are creating a database, create or replace database name. But before the database, what is the keyword we have mentioned? Transient. If you don't mention this keyword, what will happen is this database will be a permanent database. Now we are mentioning keyword called transient, right? When you are mention this keyword transient, and then when you execute this, observe this, the transient. So the name we have given for easy identification, db underscore transient. Now the database is successfully created, right? Database is created. When you refresh it, you can able to see that db, so this database created. Now if you want to see that what is the type of that, see this show databases, see this one here, so db underscore transient, see this one, you can able to see the options, see the option here, see this, but it is telling transient. But for other thing, there is no. These are the permanent databases. Class is permanent database. Other Snowflake is permanent database. Sample is permanent database. But this one is a transient database. And then what is the retention time? Only 1 day, because we didn't mention any retention time. If you don't mention any retention time, it can be a permanent table or it can be a transient table or transient database, permanent database, whatever it may be. By default, it will take as a 1 day retention time only. Now it is only 1 day retention time if you observe, right? Okay. So now, so within this is a transient database, right? Within this particular transient database, if you create any schema or if you create any table, those are also, it will be a transient only. Those are also, it will be a transient. Only the difference is in between permanent and then transient. The transient, you can, retention time, you can increase up to 90 days. So in permanent, but in transient, you cannot increase the retention time. That is the only one difference in between transient and then permanent. At the same time, fail-safe will not be available for transient. Fail-safe means whatever the retention time we discussed, right? This 90 days. After the 90 days, again extra 7 more grace days will be available in within Snowflake. But this is not be recovered by Snowflake users. If you want this particular data from after 90 days, 7 days return fail-safe zone, it can be recovered only by Snowflake support team. For this, if you want, so more than 90 days, so if you want, then for this particular fail-safe period, you need to pay to the Snowflake. So that is the only difference in between permanent and transient. When it is coming to transient, you will not have fail-safe period, and then retention period, you cannot increase more than one. More than one. So that is the difference. Now we are in transient database, right? If you create any schema here, or if you create any table here, now observe this one where it is connected. It's connected to DB transient, right? In this particular database. Now we are in this. If you create any database here, or if you create any table schema here or table, it will be a transient by default. Now let's observe this. Let's create a table and then schema here. Now schema, right? But here if you observe, we are not mentioning any keyword before that, right? Transient keyword we are not mentioning because it is not required, because already we are in a transient database. Now observe this, we are creating a schema. Now schema created. When you observe this, show schemas. Now this is the schema which you created. Observe this one, transient, right? But we didn't mention the keyword, right? But even though, because it inherits the property from the database. The same way, if you create any table here, now we are trying to create a table, create or replace table. the employees. And so within this particular schema in this database is transient, schema is also transient. If you create a table, we are not mentioning any keyword here. Observe this, create or replace table, just we are giving a table name, normal table statement. We didn't mention any keyword. Now again, if you observe, refresh, the table will be created here in this transient schema. Now the table is created. And one more thing, if you observe the icon of the table, see this one, icon of the table, how it looks like, it's with a setting symbol. And at the same time, so beside the table, it is telling that transient, right? The table name. So beside that, within the bracket, it is telling this is a transient table, right? Again, if you observe, show tables here, again, it will tell you, see this one. So this is the table which you created under this database, under this schema. See this one, table kind, what it is telling, it is a transient, right? It is a transient table. For the transient table also, if you observe, the retention time will be, by default, it will be a 1. By default, it will be 1 if you don't mention anything. Okay. Now, we are doing this in within this transient database, within this transient schema. Suppose we want to create some transient table or transient schema in this permanent databases, into this permanent database, then definitely we need to mention a keyword called transient. Then only the transient will be created here. Otherwise, if you, for example, let's connect to the database. See this one, we connected to class database. The class database is a permanent database, right? Permanent database. Now, if you want to create, so generally like this, if we create, what will happen? It will be a permanent table only. But I don't want to create a permanent table. Within this permanent database, you can create transient table, temporary table also. But within this transient database, you cannot create permanent table. You cannot create because database is transient, right? And then within this schema, this is a schema also transient. If you try to create permanent, it is not possible because database and schema are transient, right? Okay. The only difference is failsafe and retention period. Failsafe will not be there for the transient. Retention period will maximum 1 day only. Now here, if you observe, if you want to create the transient here, keyword just mention transient keyword here. See this? Now when you create this transient, then the table, same way you can create a schema also. Here if you want to create a transient schema, just mention a keyword transient. Then the schema transient will be created. Let me show you. Transient. Now observe this. Because we are mentioning the keyword because of we are in permanent database. Now schema is created. Refresh it. Now see this one schema is created. If you just observe in this particular database schemas, see this one schema is transient. This is a permanent schema, right? The same way if you want to create a transient table, but the table icon only it will show you in a different, the icon will be different. Now the transient table we created, transient table we have created here. Now let's observe this, the table where we have created, oh sorry, let's create this in a public schema. Let's change the schema to public. Now we are in permanent database, permanent schema, right? Now let's create it here. Observe this, created, refresh it. Now observe the icon here. See this, based on this icon, this is a setting symbol, right? Based on this icon, we can assume that this is a transient table. transient table. This is a permanent table. This is a transient table. Okay. Suppose these transient tables will not be removed until you drop the, this is permanently it will be available. Okay. But if you create a temporary table, if you create temporary table, so let's assume that, let's say we will create some temporary table here, and then let me show you. We have a temporary table. What we discussed, temporary table, when you create a temporary table, see this one, what is the keyword we are giving? Temporary, right? This temporary table I am creating here. Now observe the icon here. See this one, this is a clock symbol, right? This is a temporary table. Now, so let's insert some data into this table. Now we have data in the temporary table. See this, now we have data in the temporary table, 8 records. Okay. Now, for example, we are checking the data, select star from. So this is the temporary table. Now observe this, we can able to see the data, right? What we discussed, these temporary tables only for the session. So let's say when you are testing something on the temporary table, we will create and then we have to drop. So this is not, so for the, so further utilization. In that particular situation, what we can do, just we can create a temporary table. Once you log out and then log in, this temporary table will be gone. Not only for this particular thing, when you change the session ID also, the temporary table will not be available. Session ID means nothing but when you come to the new worksheet and then when you try to check the table for the temporary details, it will not be available. When it is created a new session ID, temporary table will be not available. Now observe this, the same thing we will copy and see this one here. What I am doing, I am coming to the new worksheet here. Click on the new worksheet. Now we are in new worksheet. And then if I try to execute the same thing, let's connect to the database, class database, and then public schema, right? Same. Now here also class database and public schema, this particular temporary table is available. Now I came to the new worksheet and then I am trying to execute this. Now observe this, what it is telling, table temporary does not exist, because if you observe the same thing, you can able to see the transient table, but not your temporary table here, but not your temporary table. This is because if you observe, this session ID will be different, this session ID will be different. So what we discussed, temporary tables only for the session, only for the session, right? Now just observe this here. So if you want to see that session ID, click on history, and here whatever the queries we are running, query ID is different. Query ID means each and every query, whatever you are running in your worksheets, right? Whatever we are running in the worksheet, each and every query, you will have the new query ID. These query ID are unique. These query ID are unique. Just give me 1 second. These query IDs are unique. Now, but when you observe session IDs, see this one, session ID means when you are log out and then log in, new session ID will be created. See this one. So today when you observe, so when you logged in, from the login time to till here, the same session ID is available, right? The same session ID is available. This is one of the interview question as well as certification or question also. Please observe this. And if you observe the session ID, whatever the query we ran in this session, see this one, this particular query, right? The same account, but session ID is different, because this one is because of this worksheet. We came to the new worksheet. When you are creating a new worksheet, new session ID will be created, right? So this temporary tables is only for the session. Now, okay, one more thing. Just observe, we are in the world session only. We are in this session. Temporary tables is available here, right? Now, when you run this, you can able to see the temporary table, right? Temporary table is available. Temporary is one more thing. Temporary is not for not for this schema, not for database. Temporary is only for tables only. Only for tables. Remember this is not for a schema. It is not for a database. Now this temporary table is available in this particular session, right? In this worksheet, in this database, in this particular schema, right? In this class A database, in this particular schema. Now just observe, we are log out. We are trying to log out and then again log in. Again we are trying to log in. Now observe this. Okay, before that, let me check the data here. See this one. What it is telling? Does not exist. Does not exist. Now let's go and then check. Go to public. Can you able to see the temporary table which we have created under this public schema? And then this permanent database and then permanent schema. So here we have created temporary table, but it is not available, right? So most of the time we are going to use for any backup tables when we are creating. And then if you think that, so these tables is not required, so maybe so permanently. So this one, why they are going to give this option? So main reason is to control the billing. What Snowflake will do, whatever the storage it is utilizing, we are utilizing, based on that, Snowflake will charge from the users, right? For fail safe, it will be charged. For the table storage, it will be charged, right? If you want to see that, just go to account admin. And then if you come to account icon, just observe this account icon here, and then come to the this one usage, the first one usage, and then average storage used. See this one. When you come to average storage used, see this, for what all the things the Snowflake is going to charge. So for the database storage, this is for the table storage. For the stages what we are going to in the stage, whatever the file we are going to keep it in a stage area. So like user stage, name stage, and then table stage, right? For that also it will be charged. And then observe this fail safe. Whatever the tables we have created here, right, in the worksheet till now, most of the tables are the permanent tables only. All the tables are permanent tables only. Permanent tables by default, you will have a fail safe period. You will have fail safe period. So that's why, so for the when it is coming to the transient tables, you will not have fail safe. Remember one thing, when you are working in any project, always, this is very important. So always, maybe you are familiar with, you will have dev environment. At the same time, you will have a test environment, right? And then you will have production environment, right? Generally these are the environments will be there in any of the projects, right? Dev, test, and then sometimes, so you will, so only you will have a dev one, so prod. The test also they will implement in a dev one. It depends on the project. But here, so remember one thing, production environment only you will have permanent tables and then fail safe. All the for the best practices in a Snowflake, what they will do is, so if they are maintaining dev one test environments, here most of the time you will have transient databases, transient schema, transient tables will be there because of the reason of the fail-safe period. So fail-safe, it will be charged. When you created a transient tables will not have any fail-safe. Transient tables will not have any fail-safe. The databases schemas, it will not have any fail-safe period. So that's the main reason of creating transient databases, transient schemas, transient tables in dev1 test environments. Only production tables will have your permanent tables, permanent databases, permanent schemas. Just remember this. Okay, so we will see that. So how to in the next session again we will continue the same topic. So how to create, how to convert this. For example, okay, so you assume when you working with this particular table, let's say when you are working with this particular table, so when you created, so we assume that, so okay, so I may not require this table for the next session. Okay, I have created this as a temporary table. I have again created this as a some data is available. I am doing some testing on this particular table. I am doing some R&D. I am creating some queries on this particular table. When I am doing that, okay, maybe I will, so end of the day I will think that, so okay, I required this particular table, maybe tomorrow also, maybe day after tomorrow also for some other testing purpose. Then if I log out and then if I log in, this will be gone. Then how to do that, how to handle this, right? So then in case if it is required, these temporary tables again, maybe for the further purpose, then what you can do is from these temporary tables you can create a transient tables. That we will see that in the next session how to handle this scenario. So but at this moment just remember, temporary tables, when I log out and then log in, it will be gone. When you change your session to the new session ID, you cannot able to see the temporary tables. Okay, if you want to give the temporary tables and transient tables, you need to create a keyword. And one more thing, one more certification question here. Remember this, when you are creating permanent tables, no need to mention the keyword called permanent, because this syntax they will give you in your certification question. They will give like this: create or replace permanent table, and then they will give you the syntax. But remember, the permanent keyword is not available in Snowflake. For permanent tables, no need to mention the keyword itself. It is not required, right? If you don't mention any transient, any temporary, by default it will be a permanent table. Now observe this, when I run this, what will happen? It will throw error. So they will give this statement and then they will give the below options, whether it is going to create a permanent table, it will create a transient table, it will create a temporary table. So blindly we will see that because of the permanent we will select a permanent, but so other option will be there, so it will throw error. So that is a, it will throw error because permanent keyword itself, it is not there in your Snowflake. If you want to create a permanent table, no need to mention any keyword. And remember, so one more thing, so when you're coming to the permanent, only permanent tables will have fail safe. So these transient databases and schema will not have fail safe. So temporary also will not have fail safe. Only permanent will have fail safe, and then max up to 90 days. By default, if you don't mention anything, for permanent tables also by default, retention period will be only 1 day. We will see that in the next session. So how exactly we can create this from this temporary, how to create a transient tables. So after that, we will see how to increase the retention period. So here all these are 1 day retention period. How to increase the retention period, how to change the retention period. After that, we will see so how we can able to go back and then you can check the data in a retention time period. So if you do some changes, how I can go back and then check before these changes how that table looks like. So that is time travel. We will see that. So how we can able to implement a time travel by using the retention period. So any questions here in this specific session? So please practice 1 or 2 times. So send you all the scripts to you. Any questions? Let me check in the chat window. We have some questions here.
Yeah, Dinesh, what is failsafe and what is the purpose of this?
Okay. Ishwar, when it is coming to here permanent tables, right? What is the maximum day retention time is 90 days, right?
Correct.
After 90 days, so if again they required 7 more extra days, then that will be the fail safe. When it is coming
So
to
90
days,
days plus 7 also we can
90
increase.
days plus 7. Yeah, exactly. But these 7 days, right? If this is an extra period. If you required these extra 7 days period, then you need to request from the Snowflake support team. As a
Okay.
Snowflake user, you cannot able to touch this failsafe. So that is another thing.
Okay.
Okay. You will see that. I will show you. So how to do
So up
that
to
and what
7
is
days
the
we can, we can modify the retention time for
up to
permanent
90.
tables.
Yes, exactly.
90 plus 7.
Yeah, 90 plus 90 days we can give. 7 more days by default it will be there.
Uh-huh. So no need to change any settings or any keywords
No
for.
need to do, no need to do anything. No need to do
Mhm.
anything. So for the fail safe period by default it will be there.
Okay. For
So
transients, like we cannot touch on this. For transient
transient
tables,
is not possible. Transient by default it will be 1 day. No fail safe for the transient.
oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Now you can see some questions. So 1 second. Overall by default the tables are permanent. Yeah. Tables with default retention period. So 1 day can be changed to 90 days. That is true. For the transient database can also have 90 days of retention period. No. So for the transient database, maximum 1 day. The retention period will be maximum 1 day. Okay, not 90 days. And then there is no fail safe also for the transient.
Okay, Dinesh, got it. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions from anyone?
Dinesh, this is Arvind.
Yeah, Arvind, tell
So
me.
I just came to know that the difference between this transit tables and permanent tables. So if I
Hmm.
would like to go back to the one week before the data, how it's like, so after
Hmm.
in between this 1 week period of time, you have
Hmm.
updated some records,
Hmm.
you have deleted
Hmm.
some records. So
Hmm.
I can go back to that particular date by using the timestamp also, right? So in that
Correct.
scenario, yeah,
Hmm.
by using the timestamp, the maximum
Hmm.
period of time you can go back to the database to fetch the
Hmm.
results is till
Hmm.
90 days only. So you cannot
Till 90.
exceed more than 7 days, 97 days. That is the only thing,
Hmm.
right?
Exactly. That
Okay.
is true. So I will show you
Okay.
how to use the time table option,
And
how to
yeah,
also give the offset
and
times.
again, one more question I have.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
related to the transients database, you told us that it will be the one day you can go back, right?
Correct.
So how it would be? So can you please show me that one?
Yeah,
So
we
will
will
it
see
be
that.
covered in the next
Definitely.
future upcoming classes?
Yeah, and in next session only we will cover those things.
Okay.
We will see
And
exactly how it looks like, and then so how to go back to the time travel also.
okay, one more thing. So I'm
Yeah.
asking for the earlier sessions. So
Mm-hmm.
when I have tried to delete the records from that UI, like we in the first session we directly load the records from that files to the UI, right? So there
Mm-hmm.
we didn't have the unique column. So that's the reason I didn't get an option to delete the records. When I tried
Mm-hmm.
to load the records from the like a CLI to the tables. So there,
Okay.
if I had set a unique column like timestamp, then I could
Mm-hmm.
have deleted the records. That is by
Okay.
using the rank or by using the group or by using that
Understood.
creating by giving the alias name. I have created new database and loaded the data into the table. Or otherwise, I have
Mm.
used the swap option or I have loaded the data into that, copied the data into a new table and removed the existing table. This is the way I have deleted the records. Is there any other option like this will be we can do on if you have only unique column only. If you don't have the unique column, you cannot delete the records, right? Whatever the data you provided in the employee sheet.
Correct. That is not possible. So then only option is you have to group by on all the columns.
Okay.
That is the one option. So what we can do.
Okay, Dinesh, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone?
So
Please practice.
and one more question. So you just told us that these tables will work as a backup tables, right? So when you're working on that temporary tables, so while doing development or while doing designing, so you are using this for temporary tables. But when you're coming the next day when you log out of the session, so if you would like to work on the same data, so you are going to create the transition tables. So these transition tables will work as a backup tables to the temporary tables. Is that right?
So not exactly we can say that it's a backup table for the temporary tables. Suppose if you want to work these temporary tables maybe tomorrow also, what we can do is before closing the session, so based on this temporary table, we can create another transient table. Then, so once you log out and then log in, it will be gone. Temporary will be gone, but the transient will be available for us. Okay, one way you can, so whatever you said is right. So, but not every time.
Okay.
Okay. So I will show you exactly how to convert this, how to create these transient tables from the temporary tables in the next session. I will see that.
Okay. Okay, Dinesh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, if you don't have any questions, we will wind up today. I'll connect tomorrow.
Dinesh, this is Priya here. Actually, it's not about the classes or anything. This is my first day. So I just wanted to ask you about the notes and stuff because I've missed a couple of, I've missed all the classes till today. So about the video and the notes.
Okay, sure, Priya. I will send those recorded sessions and then videos. I will tell the organizer. Who is your organizer, Priya?
I think Venkata.
Venkata. Okay, fine.
Right, so Venkata Varma. Yeah.
I will inform him. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dinesh, this permanent table, time travel options, and the practice side, practice and all we are doing tomorrow, right?
Yes.
How to see the old data, previous data.
Exactly. I will show it.
Okay.
We will see how to change the retention time. So once we see the retention time, how to change those things. So then we will see practically. So how to go back to the time travel by using this. Okay. Yes. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.